this video I'm going to paint this little landscape that you see here. Took me about 17 minutes to paint, so it's just a real quick, very loose little painting. It's also one that I think if you want to follow along and do your own version of it, shouldn't be very difficult to follow this and to copy this painting. So without further ado, here's me painting this little landscape. So I'm using a 5-color palette in this painting. So that's burnt umber, French ultramarine, pyrrole rubine, bismuth yellow, and titanium white. And I've just put a little bit of black in my brush, hardly any at all, just enough to sort of be able to draw on the canvas and get my basic shapes in and composition. By the way, the palette camera, I forgot to focus, so you're going to have to deal with that, but it's no big deal. I don't think you need to see the colors in sharp focus. I'm just glad I focused the canvas camera. Just putting in some trees, and I'm trying to really use as little paint as possible. I don't want to, if I decide I don't like what I'm doing, it's easier to wipe off if I haven't put down too much paint. But just drawing at this point and just trying to create a simple little composition. I didn't want to do anything too complicated in this painting, and just had a real simple idea. And if you're following along with this painting, there's a couple things that you want to really make sure that you try to get as close to as possible to what I'm doing. And number one is you want to get your values right. And people tend to paint things lighter than they need to. And so at this point, it's just going to be all, I'm just drawing, so you're not going to see the values. But these trees are going to be silhouetted against a bright sky. So I'm just making them black, and they'll probably get a little something else in them as I paint, but basically just painting with black to begin with. And I always work dark to light, always really trying to not finish all my blacks, but in terms of just laying everything in, just going ahead and putting in all the dark areas to begin with, and I'm sure I'll add more later, but yeah, just working with, and my black is just a mixture of French ultramarine and burnt umber, but you'll notice even these early colors that I put in are actually very, very dark compared to white. And keep in mind that my palette is not at all white. If it was white, these colors would look a lot darker. But my palette is stained basically the same color as my canvas, which makes it easier. I'm using Geneva paints in this painting, but you can use, Winsor Newton or Gamblin or, anybody really that's makes quality paints. The Geneva paint already has medium in it, so it's very fluid. It also doesn't have any fumes, which is nice, but you'll see these colors are very dark to begin with, and I almost always just try to get in the basic composition with just dark colors. It's a lot easier to put light colors on top of dark colors. And so by starting with the dark, it just makes it a lot easier later. If I was to make these colors too light and needed to darken them later on, that's more difficult than adding light colors to dark colors. So you almost can't go wrong by just putting in all your darks first. It also helps you to see what the composition looks like. If you start putting in light bits here and dark bits there, and it's all mixed up, you have a hard time seeing actually what you're doing. So if you're following along, and if you want to do your own version of this painting, by all means, instead of taking the finished painting and just trying to copy that, which you can do, you may want to just paint some, watch me do a couple minutes, and then paint that part, watch me do a couple minutes more, and then paint that part, just by pausing the video at certain stages and then sort of catching up to what I'm doing. So as I said before, this painting only took me about 17 minutes to finish. It's just a quick study. You don't have to call it a study. I think you could just hang it and put it on the wall. This painting looks a lot better from a distance than it does up close. I guess that goes without saying, but when you see these really loose paintings, they really need to be seen from 10 feet away and not up close, which is one of the reasons it can be hard to paint like this, because when you're looking at it up close, you tend to miss the big picture. So it's a good idea to step back every once in a while and kind of take a look at what you're doing. So this color that I'm putting in now is actually also quite dark. It's nowhere near the color of the sky, which is going to be quite a bit lighter. And the other thing I'm doing is I'm using a lot of dirty colors. These greens are not, when you look at them on your palette, it's real tempting to use a bright green, but you can see on my palette how dirty that green color is, if you could even call it green. If you ever have an issue with milky colors, you can always just add some burnt umber. Burnt umber is something that really gets rid of milky or grayed up color. And it's one of the reasons I find it easier to paint landscapes that have a lot of browns in it, like this one does, because you can mix it up and not get it all milky. I almost didn't publish this video because I'm not sure I like this little landscape. There's a lot of things I wanted to change about it, but I showed it to a few people and some of them really seemed to like it, so I decided I'd just go ahead and publish it. But it's really just a real quick way to paint, and it's also something that if you're not an experienced painter, this should be pretty easy to follow along with what I'm doing. Now you can see how much darker those other colors are now that I'm getting in this light sky color. And I'm going to add some more light bits to the foreground, but right now I'm just putting in this sky, and I decided not to do anything fancy with the sky. Just like an overcast sky with some, very not much for really clouds, but just a little bit of something in the sky. And you'll see that as I start to put it in. But right now I'm just laying it in. And when you're doing these paintings, these quick studies, you almost just have to just go for it. And when you're going for it, the one thing that I'm doing a lot of is always making sure I'm painting with an abstract stroke. And so you'll see me change up the way that I paint the brushwork quite a bit. Even here, holding the brush in different ways, using a different stroke. But the one thing that that people tend to do, amateurs or people that aren't experienced, is they tend to paint much more regular. In other words, without the abstraction, and you really got to have the abstraction because that's the way nature is. And so you don't just paint line, 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 or stroke, stroke, stroke. You mix it up, roll your brush, twist your brush, just drag it around, whatever you have to do to sort of get that abstractness into it. Um, I'm eliminating any of the really, really dark colors on the horizon, and that's because as things get off into the distance, you get a little more, um, not fog in the air, but just haze or whatever it is. And so you won't see anything at a great distance that's black, black, black because of that haze. And so the trees can be black, black, black because they're not very far from you, but when it comes to things that are way off on the horizon, you want to make sure you don't put any black, black, blacks in there, just because there's almost always just a little bit of haze in the air, and that sort of milks up your blacks. So that, I'm not sure I like the colors in the sky. I think that's one of the things I did decide I wished I would have done a little different. But I'm just giving it that, warm afternoon color, and trying to keep it, pretty dirty. I'm not using any really bright colors. So it's always better to start with the darker bits in the sky like I did, and then come in with the lights afterwards. It's not a hard, fast rule, but that's generally how I like to work. So you can see I'm trying to be abstract with my brushwork and trying not to overthink it and make it too regular. And that little pond or whatever it is that I'm putting in there probably could have been a little darker than that. I think I do darken it up some. But the one thing that I'm doing is really using dirty colors. So even those greens, they may look like nice strong greens, once I put them into the landscape. But really they're nothing like just vivid greens. And the reason those greens look nice is because of the rest of the painting has got dirty colors in it. I'm just using this scraper to, again, try to create some abstraction in my sky. I'm not sure that was a good idea to scrape that off, but those trees are obviously winter trees without any leaves on them. And there's a little bit of abstraction even in the trunks, where it's not just a straight perfect line, and that's really important. So a little bit of just some noise in the foreground. In general, my strokes are horizontal, left and right, not up and down, because that's just kind of the way the vegetation and everything looks, in this sort of flat landscape. But trying to keep, when you see me wiggling my brush and rolling it around, and it's just really trying to create that abstraction. Generally, you can do better with abstraction if you just go for it and you don't overthink it. I think this is a painting that many of my viewers may not care for, but this is more just a really loose, super quick landscape that's fun to paint. And I thought maybe some of you might enjoy trying something like this. You could even just try to copy what I've done, but just do it in your own style. I could have let this painting dry and then come back in and put in some more detail. Maybe I'll do another one like that in the future. And to be honest, I don't know why I decided to put all that orange out on the horizon. Normally doesn't really work very well. It would have to be the sky that created all that orange. And I think maybe I was thinking about putting a little bit of more orange in the sky, especially down on the bottom. But I never did that and decided, I guess, that it looked okay. But you know, when I'm doing these paintings, I never really know what I'm doing. But that's okay. Degas said, the great French painter, Impressionist painter, said that only when an artist doesn't know what he's doing does he do anything. And I can relate to that. So that's clearly too bright, so I'm scraping it off. But when you put something in and then go back in and scrape it off, it's a great way to get abstraction, like I've done. Now I'm just getting rid of those ridge lines that were created by the scraper. And I think this is just about finished. Not much else I want to do to it, I guess. But there it is. There's a finished little painting that took me about 20 minutes to paint. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you guys like it, I'll do some more of these in the future. Thanks for watching.